All right, Mike Damergis here, along with former pitching coach for the New York Mets, Rick Peterson, also the author of the book Crunch Time, and also a business spokesperson as well. A degree in psychology and a lot going on in baseball, Rick. A guy you know well, a team you know very well, Carlos Beltran, basically stepping away from the organization after being named the manager just basically about a month and a half ago. Rick, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure, Mike. My pleasure.
So first off, before we get into the Mets and everything, tell us about, what you've been doing since you left baseball.
Well, I co-authored the business leadership book, Crunch Time, How to Be Your Best and Matters Most. And it's about elite business leaders and elite athletes and their ability to push the pause button in a pressure situation and shift it from a threat to an opportunity. It was an unbelievable project. We won actually 2 book awards. We won a national book award and we won an international book award called Get Abstract, where we actually flew to Germany, Frankfurt, Germany, to accept the book award, which was it was like Mr. Magoo goes to Hollywood. I was like, wow. So it was a pretty cool experience. And so since then I've been doing a lot of corporate coaching, executive coaching, and corporate speaking, and a lot of events, a lot of speaking events and coaching, really the mental game of how to perform your best under pressure.
Well, speaking is performing your best under pressure, the book Crunch Time, the Mets, this is kind of what it's going on with the Mets in Major League Baseball right now. It is crunch time. It's crisis right now with the teams going through. Baseball is going through crisis. What was your first reaction when you heard that Beltran was going to be stepping down as manager of the Mets?
Well, first of all, it was expected, without question. When you look at what happened, the events that preceded that, it was, let me say it this way. I was very blessed and very fortunate. Actually, my dad was in baseball. My dad was the general manager of the We Are Family Pittsburgh Pirates. The last time they won the World Championship.
Pops, Dave Parker, Bill Madlock was on that team.
Yeah.
Kent Tekulve. Boy, that was a fun team.
Yeah, in fact, I represented Dad for the 40th anniversary this past July, which was really cool to be on the field with those guys. And I hadn't seen those guys for a while, because I grew up around those guys. But I guess what I'm saying is the fact that, being in that space, I was very blessed and fortunate to grow up with the philosophy that my mom and dad gave me to say, listen, always do the right thing and be fair. So when you have really tough decisions to make and you're confronted with something in a pressure situation, just be fair and ask yourself, what's the right thing to do? And so when you look at how this whole thing unfolded, and you looked at the report that came out from the commissioner's office and everybody involved, and we didn't really probably get into all the gory details of how they built that watch. We just found out what time it was. And you realize that a lot of people were confronted with a situation that was very tempting, and they made a bad choice. And I coached AJ with Oakland during the Moneyball years. And, AJ's of Carlos. I know both of those guys exceptionally well. These are high integrity. When you ask people, can you describe what are these guys about? High integrity, great leadership, great motivation, self-discipline, all great virtues. And yet somehow they got in the midst of some kind of gamesmanship and, got caught up in this and made a wrong decision.
For AJ Hinch, do you think Carlos Beltran's made a ton of money on the baseball field? A guy like AJ Hinch probably needs this job. And do you think do you see him managing again? You think he'll do his 1-year suspension, and can you see him behind in the dugout again? You think he comes back as a coach, possibly ease his way in as a bench coach, maybe?
Well, yes, but I think even on a deeper level, Mike, I think AJ, from how I've known AJ has a really high moral compass, and I think AJ is this is going to be like a rebirth for AJ in his own personal life, and that's what he has to deal with first here, and this is, as I co-authored the book, this is crunch time for AJ Hinch. And he really needs to like push the pause button right now and say, wait a second, what's the right thing to do now? What's exactly the right thing to do now to get back on track? You know, I got derailed without question. And so I was, let me finish very quickly. I think the biggest thing in this, Mike, is that AJ needs to forgive himself. And that's going to be a tough battle for him. You know, and I think it's a tough battle for everybody, that we've all made mistakes. And we've all made mistakes that are embarrassing, and we go like, God, what the hell was I thinking about? How could I do this? You know, I mean, this is one of the things we talk about in our book, Crunch Time. You know, when people have setbacks, you know, we start to talk to ourselves like, what was I thinking? I'm so stupid. Like, how could I blow this? How could I make that decision? And at some point, your opportunity for your setback is to now prepare for your comeback. And AJ now, and Carlos, and everybody involved with all this, they're now preparing for their comeback. And they need to look in the mirror and take a look at where they are.
And baseball shaking amid the sign-stealing crisis. AJ Hinch out of a job. Alex Cora out of a job. Carlos Beltran out of a job. Lunau, the general manager of the Astros, gone. Certainly there are more names involved, but this has to have baseball quaking. And just when we thought we were kind of getting past the steroid era, this is something that baseball doesn't want, and baseball has seen its share of scandals going on. And you know, baseball's competing with the NFL, the ratings, and how young viewers watch the game, and the popularity of the NBA. This isn't the kind of attention they want. You know, 2 of the 3 last World Series champions are known as cheaters.
Right. But you know what I think is so interesting, Mike, is the fact that when you listen to the court of public opinion, I mean, what happened through all this? So let's say the Yankees. I mean, you look at the recent offensive numbers when they played the Yankees in 2017 in the postseason, home and away. It's off the charts. So just think about, you know, the course of everybody's life. It's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, you know, like, what would my life be if this event didn't happen? Well, maybe if they weren't doing what they were doing, maybe the Yankees win one of those games in Houston instead of losing all 4 of them. And Joe Girardi's still managing the Yankees. Maybe Aaron Boone is managing somebody else's team now. I mean, you know what I mean? When you look at the course of events, not to mention that Major League Baseball has a relationship with MGM right now, and you take a look at, like, okay, would you have liked to known that if you're going to put some money on the series between the Astros and the Yankees? I'm sure some people did. That would be my guess.
Yeah, fortunes have been changed. Joe Girardi, it affected his career.
Right.
CC Sabathia was on an NFL show on Showtime, and basically said, you know, he's kind of ticked off because it was his last shot at a possible World Series. You know, fortunes change, lives change for a lot of fans that live and die with these teams. Maybe they're dealing with an illness in the family. It means so much to them. They want to get a chance to see their team in a World Series, and for this to affect it, and at least I'll say this much for baseball: they acted quickly. They didn't drag as long as they did with the steroid issue. I'll give them that much, but there's still a lot of blame to go around because baseball players can't keep secrets. And you know, what was management doing? What was the commissioner doing at this time when they heard all these whispers about the Astros over the last few years?
Right. But so to finish this big point, I'm in the midst of making is the fact that I find it so fascinating that the court of public opinion towards AJ and Alex and Carlos, they're very compassionate. These are great guys. They're not like stamping them as cheaters like they did the steroid people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're like going, oh, these are great guys. You know, I wish them well. Tom Warner, you know, called Alex the next day. How you doing? You know, is your family okay? I mean, you think people were calling A-Rod? What his name? They go, hey, A-Rod, how you doing? All right? These were haters. They turned to haters. But this is not a hater attitude towards these people, which I think is really, really fascinating. And And I think it's from a much deeper level, like people are having compassion for these people, saying like, wow, it's like too bad. And which I think is nice that people have more compassion for people in today's world, and I don't know if it's the topic or it's the way people are sentiment is more, leaning towards that way. But it's not like this hate scheme for this. It's more like, listen, and I think because in some degree, whether it's on the field gamesmanship or whether it's utilizing technology, all of us have been involved with it. If you've been in the game, like when pitchers are saying, Rick, I can't get a grip on the ball. Okay, well, I'm their coach, right? I need to help them get a grip. The reason why we're not playing October baseball is not because you can't get a grip on the ball in April. Or the reason we're not going to the next stage in October baseball is because you can't get a grip on the baseball. I need to coach you to figure out how to get a freaking grip on this baseball. Okay? Right? You start going to sunscreen. You start going to pine tar. You start going to things. I mean, is that cheating?
Well, what's allowed? Is sunscreen allowed? I know pine tar is not allowed. I know Vaseline is not allowed, and Gaylord Perry could not be reached for comment. So what is allowed? What is allowed? So for a pitcher to get a grip.
But, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. But what's so comical is that in the National League, where the pitchers hit, should they be banned from having pine tar on their bat? Because now it's on their hand, it's on their body, it's on their shirt. You know what I mean? So some of these rules are kind of like they made the rule, but nobody really cares. And this whole thing with, I mean, when you walk into a major league facility or a MLB, minor league facility, but it's very clear what everybody knows about gambling. Those signs are right in front of your face. When you come into baseball, you know what everybody feels about gambling, and that's not happening. Feeling fun.
Let's talk a little Carlos Beltran. We're talking with Rick Peterson, the former New York Mets pitching coach and also the author of Crunch Time. Rick, of course, is very insightful, uses psychology in his approach in dealing with players during his time, and basically kind of a guru. You got to know Carlos very well, and of course, the Mets in 2006 went all the way to Game 7 of the NLCS, and boy, a lot of Met fans are saying, Carlos, could you know what the pitch was coming on instead of taking a look at that third strike? That Met team, you were on the brink of going to a World Series and almost winning a World Series. Tell us about Carlos Beltran, what you know about him.
Wow, let me tell you about that moment first, personally, because when the count went to 3-2, there's about 20 seconds before Wainwright makes the next pitch, right? And as we all know, the great player that Carlos is, his opportunity to do damage and help us win this game or win this game for us at this point or tie it up, whatever. It's like, the possibilities are off the charts. And in that 20 seconds, I went back to my first Little League game. I put a uniform. My whole life came in front of me within 20 seconds, right? Going like, we're either going to the World Series or we're going home, right? And then the last moment in my mind related back to being the pitching coach, and I'm saying, Wainwright's throwing a curveball right here. He doesn't care if he walks Carlos. If he walks him, they're still winning 3-2. This is like he's throwing a chase pitch. He's not even trying to throw for a strike. It was exactly the vision I had. I envisioned Wainwright throwing a curveball for a ball, and him hoping Carlos chased it. And if he didn't, so be it. But what's so beautiful about Carlos, and it shows the integrity that he is of a great player, and it reminded me also when they asked Jeter, when they had Derek Jeter Day, I watched an interview. They said, Derek, do you ever get nervous in a big game? He said, yeah, when my teammates are batting. Which I think is awesome. And Carlos had a plan, and he knew what he was looking for. and he didn't get it. And, that's what great players do. You'll see more great players take a called third strike than bad players because they're locked in. They know the probability. They've done their homework of the data, and they know what they're looking for, and they know the probability, the highest probability of what they're going to get, and they stay disciplined for it. And if they get it, like if he got what he was, where his mind was, and he got it, we probably won. We probably go to the World Series. That's the kind of player Carlos Beltran is.
And Carlos, certainly a Hall of Fame career. We've seen, of course, going back to the Black Sox scandal, players like Joe Jackson not getting the Hall of Fame, Pete Rose not in the Hall of Fame, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens currently not in the Hall of Fame. When his time comes, when Beltran's time comes and the writers are going to vote, do you think this will hurt him as far as possibly going to the Hall of Fame?
I think it depends on Carlos's, and I'll go back to what's your opportunity. Carlos, you have an opportunity right now. He sent his first message that he sent out. He seized that opportunity. His first opportunity, he won that game big time. His message that he sent out was absolutely awesome today. And that's the stand-up guy that Carlos is. Now how he handles the next couple opportunities moving forward, and how he's going to eventually explain, because I think what everybody's going to want to hear, and everybody needs to hear, well, tell us why. Tell us what were you thinking. I mean, this is not like, these are bright, intelligent leaders that make great decisions. And for whatever reason they made these decisions that they made, just help us out. Give us some insight. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? I mean, did you think you weren't robbing the bank? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it's like anything. It's like a stockbroker embezzling money. It was there for the taking, and it was too good to pass up. I guess that would be it. And, Carlos coming out to say, over my 20 years in the game, I've always taken pride in being a leader and doing things the right way. And in this situation, I failed. I'm very sorry. It's not who I am as a father, husband, and teammate, and as an educator. So, Carlos, making a statement, like you said, trying to get ahead of this thing, and everything you've heard about Beltran over the years. Good guy, looked up to. And I think people are just shocked over this. And another player isn't there yet, but certainly Jose Altuve, when his time comes out, how is he going to be looked at? Now there's reports possibly saying that he had some kind of buzzer on him as well, that he was getting signaled that way. Altuve is going to be looked at differently as well. So, this, I think...
Everybody is until they tell their story.
Yeah, the Pandora's box is open. And that's the one thing that bothers me about the steroid era, Rick. And we're talking with Rick Peterson, former New York Mets pitching coach and author of the book Crunch Time. No one's really said anything except Jose Canseco.
Interesting. And you're right. You're talking about the steroids.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The only thing I can say about the steroids is the fact that this was right in front of my face. And I didn't know anything about steroids. I don't know anything. I know, when I say I don't know anything, very little I know about steroids. I know if you take steroids, it's somehow going to affect your system, and you can get big and strong and faster and recover better. I mean, I know like the basic elevator speech of what steroids. It was right in front of my face with all these guys, and I didn't see it. I was so blind and so ignorant to it. I didn't see it. In fact, I was fortunate to be the pitching coach on the Major League Baseball All-Star Tour back in like the year 2000. Barry Bonds went on that trip, and his trainer, Greg Anderson, right? Is that was it?
Yes. Yep.
Greg Anderson was on the trip, and I was in the workout room. It was just me and Greg. Like I remember in my memory, like at least four days, it was just me and him in there working out. Like lifting weights and, I mean, not training. I'm, just lifting weights to try to stay in shape. And I asked him 10 billion questions. Like, God, what does this guy eat? Like, man, like, what kind of workouts does he do? And he's probably looking at me going like, what, are you kidding me? You know, I don't know what he thought, you know, and he said to me, he said, listen, when you come back to Oakland next year, you know, come out to the lab and, you know, we'll do some tests. Because I was talking about nutrition and, you know, the fact that, you know, I stopped eating red meat when I was 21 years old. And, you know, I was really into nutrition and training and the whole deal. And he's like, yeah, come out to the lab, you know, we'll do some tests and, you know, the whole deal. You know, I mean, so this was all around me, right in front of me, and I was blind, totally blind.
So players were sitting. Sammy Sosa hit 60 home runs 3 different times. You didn't think something was up?
No, I heard players whisper about it, but I'm saying I didn't really think about it. My mind didn't focus on it because my mind is hyper-focused on whatever my task is in life. You know, so, you know, I don't like, you know, I mean, during a season, people go like, oh, like they invaded Iran. Iran? Is there where's Iran? I don't know. What are you talking about? You know, it's like, all I know is like we're playing this team. Here's their 13 hitters, and I can tell you who's going to swing at the first pitch. Who's going I mean, all my mind is filled in a cave of the other team's lineup and our pitchers and how we're going to sequence pitches to get these guys out. I mean, you're so hyper focused that I didn't have time to think about anything else because my job was overwhelming. You know, we didn't have the analytics staff that they do now. Now I just walk in and say, like, here's what I need. These guys, they would give it to me. Instead, I was building the jigsaw puzzle every 3 or 4 days myself and Paul DiBattista.
And talk about being
David Force.
Yeah, talk about being a pitching coach. We have all, like you said, all the new analytics today, and sometimes I think the personal touch is lost with all new analytics. Myself being a teacher, I teach. I reach the students differently. I treat each one, know when to motivate them. Talk about the approach that you have to have as a coach, that you really have to be individual with guys and not, you know, it's not a cookie cutter kind of approach when dealing with, say, 10, 12 pitchers on a staff.
Well, let me say this. The biomechanics of a pitching delivery, and I was the first person to, when I was with the White Sox, the first year I was with the White Sox, my number one job when I got to Birmingham or task was I needed to go to ASMI, Dr. Andrews' lab, to study the biomechanics of the pitching delivery. I mean, so, you know, I was on the forefront of all this research, and I was in Birmingham for 3 years. You know, so, you know, I'm studying all this. So the biomechanics and the analytics and spin rates and, you know, vertical movement and horizontal movement and, you know, all the different analytics that go into developing a pitcher, you know, that's like simple. That's like moving furniture in your living room. You know, literally, once you understand that, then it becomes the mind. And I'm going to say, as a pitching coach for 15 years in the big leagues, 90% of what you coached was the mind. To help guys' mind get in the right place to execute one pitch at a time and one hitter at a time.
That's incredible.
I mean, really down to that basic, right? So you have to have a delivery that you can repeat, and then you have to understand your spin rate and what your spin rates mean. So you never ask Zach Britton, who's got very low spin rate and who has a dominating, you know, it was rated sabermetrically the number one pitch like a couple years ago in all of baseball. Like in 60 innings, he gave up 15 fly ball outs. Are you kidding me? You kidding me? In 60 innings, he got 15 outs in the air.
That's it?
Yeah, right. So you would never ask Zach Britton to throw 14 fastballs up on the strike zone. You know, but when you look at Garrett Cole, who had the ability to have high spin rate, and in Pittsburgh, you know, he was more of a sinker ball type pitcher. You know, so once they understood the analytics and the model, it's like, look, you got a stronger model here by changing your style of pitching because you have high spin rate. So if you start pitching up in the strike zone, you know, more up in the strike zone, you know, so you start coupling it, you know, and it's like very simple. I mean, so the analogy I would use for pitchers, like when you're talking about the mental game for them to understand that, you know, how these pitches match, now they call it tunneling. You know, I mean, we had different names for it, same thing. You know, but you would ask them, they'd say, look, do you like vanilla ice cream? So, yeah, I love vanilla ice cream. Do you like ketchup? Yeah, I like ketchup. Do you like ketchup on your vanilla ice cream? No, geez, that's awful, right? So those two flavors don't match. So this is what you're trying to do as you're pitching. You're throwing two pitches that have they're great flavors, and individually on their own, they don't couple each other. That's not the tunneling effect. You're not getting the tunneling effect in today's game as they use the language. So this is what you have to do. You have to be able to, pitch off of these angles. It's all about angles and vectors and multiple progressions. But when you talk about communicating it, because it was so interesting when I was in New York and I'd go on Mike and the Mad Dog, and they started asking me about biomechanics, and I started talking about hit rotation velocities and give them technical stuff, because that's the question they ask. Then I get off the air, and now my friends call me and go, God, they're killing you. They're like, oh, God, you think Oliver Perez understands that? I'm like, oh, geez, you think I'm talking to Oliver Perez about that? I'm talking to Oliver Perez about the merengue and the salsa.
let me ask you, Rick. So you're a former pitching coach, and what you're hearing about all the home runs in baseball now is a launch angle. How do you approach that as what would you tell your pitchers, and, so hitters don't get that launch angle? And tell me, what is the launch angle anyway? Just let the fans know, the pedestrians like myself, the launch angle. Is it true, or is it just a term they're using that's been around for baseball for 100 years?
Well, what it means is that if you hit the ball in the air and you hit it far and it goes over the fence, you've launched that in an angle that will carry it over the fence. If you hit it hard and it hits right in front of home plate, and then the next hop goes to the shortstop, and the exit velocity was the same, one's a homer because you hit it in the ground, and one's an out because you hit it in the ground, and the other's a homer because you hit it in the air. I mean, to oversimplify.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Well, that makes me understand it better now.
Right. In order to hit the ball over the fence, you got to hit it in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a launch angle. So for example, if you a couple of years ago, Robinson Cano had like 2 home runs in the first half of the season, and everybody was trying to figure out. They were trying to figure out why. This is when he was in Seattle, and they're trying to figure out why. Because his exit velocity was like over 100. So basically, he was hitting homers that were one hoppers to the second baseman. Because of the angle of the swing.
Wow. Okay.
So once they got him to hit the ball in the air, and they changed the angle of the swing, it's very similar in golf when you have a shot around the green. And you get 5 golfers on the PGA Tour. Phil Mickelson may hit it like 20 feet in the air. One guy may hit it like one hop and hit the ground right away. There's like 5 ways to get this ball to the hole. So those are all right. And TrackMan has been used in golf. That's where TrackMan was. That's where the birth was in TrackMan. Golfers have understood this for years, and that's why that's why these golfers are doing what they're doing now. They have a TrackMan system right behind them, and they look at like here's how high I want to hit this shot, and here's the kind of vertical or horizontal angle I want. And then they stand there and they practice shot after shot, and that's what everybody's doing with pitching in baseball now. You cleared up the
launch angle. You cleared up the launch angle for me. So before I let you go, I want you to. Of course, we're talking to Rick Peterson, former New York Mets pitching coach and author of Crunch Time. Good enough to join us tonight as Carlos Beltran steps down. Gave us some good insight on Beltran. Talk about what goes on in the dugout, the gamesmanship that goes on in the dugout as far as stealing signs without the video. So do you need to get a guy at second base to steal signs? How does it work? Explain to the average fan how stealing signs works. First base?
Well, you can see it from first base. Runners at first base can see it because their leads take them like 12 feet towards second base. You don't get it from third base because you're not leading towards second base. You're not getting on the field. The angle's not good enough. So you have to be able to see the catcher's fingers. But normally, if you're really good at having a system to your own system so you're avoiding the other team to steal your sign. So for example, so let's say the catcher, you'll see catchers right before he gives his fingers, he'll touch his mask, say his right arm or his left arm, and his chest protector. So that would be mask 1, arm 2, chest protector 3. So they'll say like, all right, it's the first sign. So if he touches his mask, that means that now when he puts his fingers down, it'll be the first sign after a 1. So he may put down 2, 1, 3, 4. Then it's after a 1, that's a 3, slider. And if there is no 1, then it's a fastball. So he may put down 2, 4, 3. No 1, fastball. Now the next pitch, now it's the first sign. He touches his arm first, then his mask. That means it's the first sign after 2. And you just switch in signs. You have a whole sequence. It's basically just multiple progressions.
And then how do you relate that to the hitter? Then how does that relate to the hitter?
If it's done with no technology?
Yes. Yeah, it's done without cheating. Yes, that's what I'm saying. If it's done without cheating.
Right. With no technology, that's fair game. With no technology. So in other words, say the runner's at second base, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's standing there. Now he gets the sign, and he now let's say it's going to be a fastball inside. So he may just touch his helmet. If he touches his helmet, that's a fastball inside. If he touches his face, it's a fastball away. If he touches his knee first, it's a curveball. Because normally you don't need to know location for breaking stuff in most cases. It's more for fastballs. But anyway, so you just have a simple system. So I'm standing at second base. I got your sign. I touch my hat. Put my hands on my knee, and you as a hitter know that that's a fact. You're going to get a fastball inside.
How much time is spent on creating signs? How much preparation is that between the coach and the players?
There's a ton of it spent with the catcher and the pitcher and the pitching coach. A ton of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's something that as an average fan you take for granted, the amount of time.
That's why the games are lasting so long. The games are lasting so long because now it used to be you only did those kind of signs when there was a man on second base or maybe first base. Now they're doing it with nobody on base because everybody's paranoid. Like, okay, who's got what?
Do you think
how tough is it? How tough is it to if you have something that you can see from center field and you have it, it's like, okay, you just change the game.
Do you think we're going to see a day so we don't have these stealing of the signs and maybe speed up the game, that we actually have it where the catcher has an earpiece and the pitcher has an earpiece and the pitching coach on the bench is basically saying throw fastball, throw curveball, throw slider or something like that?
Without question.
Without question, yeah.
I mean, with the technology that we have, it's just what it takes uniformed people with high tech people that understand the game of baseball and sitting down and collaborating and saying, okay, I mean, like everybody's got earbuds in, right? He walks around with an earbud.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing it already in society.
Everybody's looking down with the earbuds and their cell phones on, so why not on the baseball field, right?
Yeah. You just have a direct communication, so that everybody knows what's happening. It's really so simple. It's ridiculous. And I think what happens, and this is, and I'll say it this way: people either have growth mindsets or they have fixed mindsets. And the other big factor is the fact that what has really happened here is that Major League Baseball, because of replay, put systems this close to the dugout. They gave everyone the tools. Okay, so everybody's mind is thinking about you. Like you asked, how do you do it on the field with no technology, right? I mean, that's been going on forever in the game. Now, Major League Baseball, because of replay, which is great, now put a system right next to the dugout of tools that all these people who are expert in the game, like Carlos Beltran, is like, wow, like his nostrils like flared when he took a deep breath. These guys, Carlos Beltran and Delgado and Sean Green, when I was in New York, they were. It was scary how they could just watch a pitcher and just go like, all right, just tell you what every pitch was.
How important is it for a hitter to know what pitch is coming? Because Paul O'Neill said he didn't want to know what pitch.
Depends on the guy.
Yeah.
Everybody's individual. I mean, when you think about it, if you're going to go into the batting cage and you want to work on hitting a curveball, would you want to know a curveball's coming? And if you wanted to go in the batting cage and hit a fastball inside, would you want to know a fastball inside's coming?
I would, because I stink, but Rick,
it's kind of like to me, it's like you stand at the tee box. You want to know, is it a dog leg right or is it straight? Let me see it before I hit the shot, right?
Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And, of course, Rick Peterson, former Mets pitching coach, author of Crunch Time, #1 on the Amazon bestseller list. So there you go. Follow Rick on Twitter.
Weeks. Yeah, how about that?
At Rick Peterson CT. And final thought here, where does Carlos Beltran go from here?
He goes back home with his family, and he heals, and he gets his opportunity right now to really send out the message of what Carlos Beltran wants to do, and where he stands, and really explain to everyone. Everyone needs to know. The last two things I'm going to say. Number one, all four of these people, they have to forgive themselves first. They have to forgive themselves first, and then they have to ask for a way to be forgiven. And if they all become transparent with all that, and they come from a place of love and compassion, then Carlos Beltran, the sky's the limit of what his choices are, what he wants to do in baseball or out of baseball.